Leaze.
Thank you, Mr Holloway. Very good to see you in the chair, and I congratulate my honourable friend and colleagues on securing this important debate. I'd like to start by acknowledging the very important work of nurseries and early years settings in my constituency. They've been called social infrastructure of the area, and of course they are at the heart of child development, but also of supporting parents in their work and in easing family budgets. I also want to particularly mention the maintained nursery school in Alton in my constituency called Bushy Leaze, which does very high value work in high needs and supporting parenting and outreach in the community and in partnering with local schools. I should also acknowledge the commitment of the government to early years education and childcare, with no fewer than five extensions to early years and childcare entitlements since 2010, the 15 hours, the 30 hours, tax-free childcare, the 85% reimbursement under universal credit, and crucially for this debate, the 2-year-olds 15 hours offer. But finances, of course, are difficult in this sector. They were hard even before the pandemic, and they have become worse. I welcome, like others, the £44 million. And I know that the department does do regular analysis of cost structures in this sector, but clearly that still remains very difficult to manage in some cases. I hope the Minister will keep all that under review, make sure that process is transparent, and as time goes on, pegged to how costs increase, particularly, of course, the national living wage. Longer term, I think there's more, actually, that we could do also to ease cost pressures on the sector, particularly with trying to spread out more the demand on the 3- and 4-year-old offers, where you get a lot more children in the summer term than you do in the autumn term, but of course you try to staff for the whole year. And on maintained nurseries, of course, they are more costly, but that is partly because they do more. Like others, I welcome the continuation of the supplemental funding, but of course what that sector really needs is long-term visibility and security in its funding. I very much welcome the fact the Minister has said there will be more to say on that soon. And I hope it's possible to tie that in with a wider look at the sector and how all parts of it fit together. I haven't got time to give most of my speech in the circumstances. Others have said how important early years education is. It's fundamental for social mobility, for dealing with some of the most entrenched disadvantages in our society. One extra thing I should mention is the increased prevalence we've seen of children presenting with high needs. And that's some combination of greater diagnosis, greater awareness, and some perhaps greater underlying prevalence as well. But for whatever reason, we know that the earlier that you can help and support those children and their families, the better for them, of course, but also later on, the more it will ease the pressure on the school system. In that wider look at how the sector works, how it all fits together, I think ideally you would have a geographically distributed network of maintained nursery schools with a defined set of core services, one of which would be to support the PVI, private, voluntary and independent sector nurseries in their area. I think there's also more opportunity to use primary school settings. We put in a fund a couple of years ago a capital fund to allow more of that, but there's far more potential. But very important that if you do have those nurseries, that includes some year-round provision as well. We need a people plan, because this is all about people, the wonderful people who work in our nurseries. And I very much welcome that in the T-Levels programme, early years and childcare is one of the very first T-Levels to come on stream. There are one or two other very, very important people in this child's life, and that is, of course, mum and dad. And that home situation may be becoming more complex in the current time, partly because of the developments in electronica and so on. But we know that about a fifth of the difference in the development of cognitive ability is to do with parental engagement. But it is very, very difficult for public policy to start getting involved in that arena. But nursery schools and others working in the early years can play a really important part supporting parents with the support they're looking for. I also hope the government will continue with and grow the Hungry Little Minds campaign, which uses ambient opportunities, people on the bus, on the train, eating their breakfast cereal, about to go to bed, to help to promote early literacy. The BBC have a really important role to play too, and if the erstwhile honourable member for Birkenhead was still in this house, he would remind us of the time he was talking to some 15-year-olds at a secondary school in Birkenhead. They said there were two things that they really wanted to learn more about at school. One was how to make lifelong friendships, and the second was how to be good parents. Everybody has a huge part to play. We need to work out how this social infrastructure that we've been talking about can best support all of this important work.